Breaking news into CBS Sports HQ, Drew Brees has made it official. After 20 years in the NFL, the Saints quarterback is calling it a career, announcing his retirement Sunday via social media. Brees retires as the league's all-time leading passer with 80,000-plus yards and second in touchdown passes with 571. Brees is a 13-time Pro Bowler, a Comeback Player of the Year, a Super Bowl MVP, and a future first-ballot Hall of Famer. Here is that post making it official from Drew Brees on his Instagram, saying, after 20 years as a player in the NFL and 15 years as a Saint, it's time that I retire from the game of football. Each day, I poured my heart and soul into being our quarterback. To the very end, I exhausted myself to give everything I had to the Saints organization, my team, and the great city of New Orleans. We shared some amazing moments together, many of which are emblazoned in our hearts and minds and will forever be a part of us. You have molded me, strengthened me, inspired me, and given me a lifetime of memories. My goal for the last 15 years, striving to give you everything you had given to me and more. I am only retiring from playing football, and I am not retiring from New Orleans. This is not goodbye, rather a new beginning. Now my real life's work begins. Let's get our guys in the mix. CBS senior NFL insider Pete Prisco alongside Jamie Eisenberg. Gentlemen, feels a bit of formality after Drew Brees was leaning towards retirement this offseason. But Pete, your initial thoughts here on a career punctuated by Drew Brees?
Well, you kind of expected this would happen. There were hints of it on his last game, and he spent a lot of time on the field after that game. And he goes out as one of the all-time greats. I mean, this guy, with what he did with the physical limitations that he had, is absolutely incredible. The mind, I used to say, was one of the best, if not the best, weapon in the National Football League, and the things he did with it are amazing. Once told me he completed over 100 passes without even seeing the receiver because he had repped it so many times and knew where that guy was going to be. So great career, on his way to Canton, and the Saints have a lot of work to do to try and find a replacement, or at least come close to replacing Drew Brees.
And that's the big story, obviously, is how do you replace a legend? How do you replace a Hall of Famer? How do you replace the guy that's arguably on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks in fantasy and reality? And so is it Taysom Hill? Is it Jameis Winston? What are the Saints going to do? But obviously Drew Brees is one of the best to ever do it. As Pete said, there's not much more to add to it aside from the fact that, he's made guys have amazing careers. We're going to find out now just how good guys like Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara are without Drew Brees. We saw a little snippet of it with Taysom Hill last year. We saw it with Teddy Bridgewater the year before. But clearly replacing a guy of his caliber, it's why you hear the Saints in the mix for Deshaun Watson, for Russell Wilson, for trying to get one of those guys, because I don't think they want to go into the next era of their team without one of these caliber of quarterbacks. So we'll see what they do and what Sean Payton does, but obviously Drew Brees leaves behind an amazing legacy and just one of the best to ever play the game, one of the best to ever play the quarterback position.
Undoubtedly, and in an era where quarterback play was highlighted in an even bigger way than ever before. Drew Brees, a huge part of the passing boom in the NFL. When he was drafted, there had just been one 5,000-yard season prior to that date. Brees finished with 5. He also has 4 of the top 6 seasons in terms of passing yards. And Pete, you speak to those physical limitations, the shoulder and the injury that threatened his career early on. We remember these quarterbacks and these teams and these moments in different ways, but the way that we remember Drew Brees, how will that be when we look back on this historic career, Pete?
I think it's as a feisty competitor who knew what you were doing on defense as he was taking the snap. I mean, he was brilliant in terms of dissecting defenses. And remember, when he had the shoulder surgery, he came back and his arm was actually better. There were questions about his arm strength coming out of Purdue. He did seem to get a little bit more strength in that arm. And it was never the greatest arm in the world, but it was good enough. And that mind is what made the difference for him. And at the end of it all, he's a 6-foot quarterback who threw for tons of yards and is on his way to Canton. That tells you how important it is to know how to play the position, and he did it as well as anybody ever did.
6 feet with an immeasurable heart, and that heart was on its greatest display when New Orleans was in its darkest days. Jamie, just the meaning of this man to this city, this fan base, can you put that into words for us?
I think he said it, the fact that he's retiring from the NFL, but he's not retiring from New Orleans. I mean, the city obviously means so much to him. And let's face it, what he went through heading into last season with some of the things that he said and try to make amends for that. So obviously he wants to leave a legacy behind with what he did in the community, with what he did to help bring that franchise back, like you said, from the devastating hurricane. He's a part of that culture. He's a part of the New Orleans Saints. He'll forever be a part of the New Orleans Saints, and he's one of those guys, when you think about certain teams, you're always going to think about certain players, and Drew Brees to New Orleans will always be sort of that marriage. Like Pete said, he started with the Chargers. That was the first team that he played for, but I don't think many people are going to remember his days with the Chargers, as great as he was then, because he's done so much with the New Orleans Saints, winning a Super Bowl, the MVPs, the 5,000 yards, so what he's done on the field, but obviously what he's done off the field as well. So he's a part of that community forever, and hopefully he stays a part of that community for as long as he wants to be, and it seems like he's going to want to do that for a very long time.
Pete, you alluded to it a moment ago. It is a what have you done for me lately league, and Drew Brees leaves behind a great legacy, but also a massive void at the quarterback position. What is the best fit in this ever-changing quarterback carousel that we're seeing this offseason?
Well, I think Jamie mentioned it. Ideally, they'd love to have Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson. I don't see that happening on either front. They have a lot of cap issues, and getting those guys in under the cap would be tough. So I don't think those happen. What I do think will happen, I think they'll bring back Jameis Winston and let him compete with Taysom Hill. And as crazy as that sounds, I think Jameis Winston at 27 years old in that offense has a chance to turn his career around. As far as Taysom Hill, look, I wouldn't play Taysom Hill as my quarterback ever, but I know Sean Payton has a real affection for him. He likes him a lot. I mean, I've had conversations with Sean where he pumped him up even before he even played in the league. He really likes Taysom Hill, but I think this will be Jameis Winston going back and winning the job, and he will be the quarterback, and then you throw in Taysom Hill and his gimmick act.
This is where fantasy and reality differ. So from a reality standpoint, I would love to see the Saints give Jameis Winston the opportunity to be the starting quarterback there. And let's give Sean Payton some credit for what Drew Brees did. Who knows if Drew Brees had signed with the Dolphins and Nick Saban didn't make the move to go with Dante Culpepper over Brees because of the shoulder injury. Would Drew Brees be this type of player that we're talking about? Probably not, because the marriage of Brees and Sean Payton made Drew Brees what he is. Not to take anything away from Drew Brees, but when you have this play caller and the system that Sean Payton allowed Drew Brees to play in, I think that allowed Brees to flourish to the level that he's at. Now, let's see if Jameis can do that. But unfortunately, when it comes to what they're going to do, and Pete said it, they're going to have the gimmick act. They're going to put Taysom Hill out there. So let's just let it, from a fantasy perspective, Taysom Hill take the job, because he was a great fantasy quarterback in the 4 games that he started last year. He runs. We love to see that. That wasn't part of Drew Brees' game. And now we'll see what he could do with a full offseason with a Michael Thomas, with an Alvin Kamara, what they do to put around those guys now that they're moving on from Jared Cook and Emmanuel Sanders. So they have some questions, obviously, to help the quarterback there. But I think from a fantasy standpoint, you like to see one guy, because if it is going to be somebody else and Taysom Hill, that's going to take away from the starters, whether it's Jameis or somebody else. And the reason I like to see Jameis go someplace else is because he was a 5,000-yard passer. He's on the same level as Drew Brees from that standpoint and that standpoint alone, but he does have that on his resume. So I'd like to see Jameis go get an opportunity to be a starter without the gimmick coming in and take him off the field, and let Taysom Hill be that guy, because he was pretty good for fantasy managers.
Jamie Eisenberg, Pete Prisco, we appreciate the thoughts as they turn the page in New Orleans. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, to put the